Signalboosters.com. Reliable indoor wireless coverage.
There are a lot of antennas out there. What makes yours different from the others on the market?
This antenna is 6 times more powerful than the stock antenna that comes with your cell booster kit. Basically, what we're doing is increasing the gain on the directional antenna and allowing more gain to enter the system. By putting more directional gain on an antenna, you're able to amplify your signal quality. You're able to go further away from the cell tower, and overall your performance is going to improve dramatically by being able to add a stronger, more powerful antenna to your cell booster system.
So how do I use this antenna?
So the antenna is very directional. What that means is that it has to be pointed in the direction of the cell tower in order to see signal. When you have a directional antenna, the gain has a direct correlation with how focused that signal beam is. And when you can manipulate the signal beam by adding more gain and making that signal beam more narrow, you're able to reach further with your antennas. And as you get closer to the tower, say you're in an urban environment, you get a better highway or better speed, throughput, clarity. All your communications between the antenna and the tower are dramatically improved by allowing more signal to travel on a narrow highway to that signal or to that tower. So by having a directional antenna, you have to point it right at the cell tower. When you have a 24 dBi directional antenna, that signal beam is very, very narrow. It comes down to almost 7 degrees. So any deviation left or right from the direction where the antenna is pointing, if you move to the left or right of where that cell tower is, you're going to lose the signal. So you have to think of like a laser pen. It's a very narrow focused beam, and you need to point directly at the tower. So when you're aiming the antenna, you need to be very patient. You need to sweep left and right as you're looking for the cell tower to see signal improvement or signal decreasing. As opposed to the 8 dBi or 12 dBi antennas that are out there in the market for cell boosters, they have 60 degree and 45 degree beam width. So it's more forgiving. It's less directional. The trade-off is that if you're able to spend the extra time to point the antenna directly at the tower, everything is going to improve dramatically. But you need to be right on it. So when you're using the antenna, it needs to be on the pole that you can twist a little bit. And then once you've got that signal locked in, tighten your bolts real tight so that animals, wind, and things like that don't move the antenna around. You want the antenna to be fixed on that tower for a very long time.
What are the specifications of the antenna?
So the antenna has a varying gain depending on which part of the cellular spectrum you want to use. The antenna works from 600 megahertz all the way up to 2200 megahertz, covering the entire cellular band. It has a continuous gain radiating pattern or radiating signal throughout the entire cellular spectrum, so you don't have to worry about which frequency you want to use. The antenna works on the entire cell spectrum and works automatically with your cell booster. On the lower part of the spectrum, from 700 to 980, it has a gain of about 15 to 17 dBi depending on which frequency you're on. And on the upper part of the spectrum, it has a gain between 22 to 25 dBi depending on which frequency you're on. On the back of the antenna, you actually have an N-female connector. So all your typical N-type males on your thick coax cables will work on this, and it's gonna be outdoor ready. The N connector is outdoor weatherproof. That's the one you want to use for these kind of frequencies and for outdoor weather ratings. It is a aluminum mesh grid, so the wind's going to pass right through, and it mounts on a pole using a system of U-bolts.
What are some scenarios where this antenna is the best option?
So there are 3 really great scenarios where this antenna would be awesome. First off, it's going to be the guys who are closer to the edge of the cell network, where the signals are dropping dramatically, or you might not have any signal at all. Since the antenna is so directional, it's very powerful and allows you to reach further on that cell band. So it's able to reach further away towers and get signal where you didn't have any at all, or improve some small signal to hopefully improve it so you can make better calls and better clarity, have better clarity on those calls. The urban user, someone who's in closer to a cell tower, or someone who's closer to a number of towers, can use this antenna to get better clarity and performance on your signal booster. So that antenna might have, or that antenna previously on your current cell booster might have too much noise in the area. So there's other towers conflicting. The amplifier is having to work hard to be able to communicate to the tower that it wants because of your lower gain antenna, like the 8 dBi and the 12 dBi. Since it has a wider radiation pattern, it might be seeing more towers and adding more noise to your network or to your booster. The directional antenna is able to hone in directly on the tower you want, which makes the communication highway between your booster and the antenna tower much better. And then lastly, the installer, so the integrator. This person might have a scenario where you're trying to reach one tower and for one carrier, and you have a conflicting carrier in front of that, and it's overloading your amplifier. You might want to use a high gain directional antenna like this one to point away from that line of towers and maybe find another tower on a different cell that's further away, where previously with a lower gain antenna you would not have reached it. This way you're able to put two donor antennas on your booster and use this high gain directional to focus in on that specific carrier that you wanted that you couldn't previously talk to because of a conflicting carrier in front of that tower.
So what is a realistic expectation as to how many more bars someone can expect from this antenna compared to others?
So since this antenna has 24 dBi of gain as opposed to the 8 dBi antennas that come with the cell booster kit, you're adding much more power to the system. When you're doing that, you're able to reach further and have better signal clarity between towers and the antenna if you're closer to them. When you have that much power looking at a cell tower, previously you might have been at 0 to 1 bars. In that scenario, these are people who are out on the edge of the cell. They might be able to get 2 to 3 bars. People who are closer to the cell tower, who are 2 to 3 and 4 bars, they can see improvements all the way up to full bars. So the improvements are always going to be positive once you aim the antenna directly at the cell tower and you have elevation and clear line of sight between the antenna and the cell tower. But the environment plays a big role on whether or not you're going to get 2 to 5 bars of improvement. It really depends on how you can aim the antenna and how good your vantage point is between the antenna and the tower.
Is this weatherproof?
So the antenna has a grid mesh allowing for winds to pass through it up to hurricane speed winds. It is powder coated, so it is going to be able to spend a lot of time in the sun, and it's going to be very resistant to inclement weather, hot, cold, high winds. As long as something big doesn't hit it, it's going to live through any kind of storm.
Is this antenna 5G ready?
It is. So the antenna actually works all the way up to 6.5 gigahertz. There is a lot of 5G bands opening up on 3.5 and sub 6 gigahertz, as well as some talk of it being on 600 megahertz and 700 megahertz. This antenna is continuously radiating from 600 megahertz all the way up to 6.5 gigahertz. So wherever the 5G spectrum opens up within that frequency, this antenna will automatically work on those bands.
Can anyone use this?
The antenna is really easy to use as long as you put your phone in some sort of field test mode or use some sort of app that tells you in real time what the signal coming from the booster is doing. If you have your app open or your phone showing you in real time what the signal is, you're able to aim this antenna and see how the signal improves or degrades as you go left and right. Once you've got the cell tower, you point in and you hone in, and you just set and forget. It's very easy to use. Once you're in, you don't have to think about it again. As long as you have your handy app, you're going to be aiming and happy in a breeze.